Welcome to The Psychology of Us. This podcast is created by R.J. Starr, a public intellectual and independent psychology educator. The material presented is educational and interpretive, examining psychological life as a domain of understanding rather than intervention. It does not provide therapy, diagnosis, or professional guidance. Each episode stands as a complete work of public psychological inquiry.
So imagine walking into a Monday morning meeting.
Oh boy, we've all been there.
Right, and every single person sitting around that conference table just knows that the Q3 project is an absolute unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
The timeline is blown, the budget is hemorrhaging, and the morale of the team is it's practically subterranean. Yet, when the VP of sales walks in, every single person in that room smiles, nods, and congratulates them on their, bold vision.
It's wild.
It really is. And if you are listening to this right now and feeling a knot in your stomach because you have lived that exact scenario, consider this deep dive your essential survival guide.
Definitely.
Because we are exploring those moments when you look around your workplace and think, wait, why is the bad behavior not just happening but being actively protected?
It is a deeply disorienting experience.
Yeah.
You really start to question your own reality. And the frustration usually defies those simple, comforting explanations like, we just have a bad boss, or it's a high-stress industry. We are talking about something much more insidious today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for today's deep dive is to explore a framework by theorist R.J. Starr.
Right.
Specifically a concept called institutional contamination and organizational rot. And there's this brilliant metaphor Starr uses called the moldy blueberry model.
It's such a great visual.
It really is. So we're going to look under the hood of corporate dysfunction. We want to understand the psychological architecture of how an entire system, whether that's, a massive tech company, a hospital, or just local nonprofit, completely loses its capacity to correct itself.
That phrase right there, capacity to correct itself, that is the anchor for this entire discussion.
Right.
As we dive into Starr's work, we really have to draw a hard line between ordinary workplace friction and genuine institutional decay.
Because they aren't the same thing.
Not at all. I mean, every workplace has friction. Missed deadlines, miscommunications, personality clashes. That is just the cost of doing business with human beings.
Yeah.
But friction is an event. Rot is a condition.
A condition. Okay, so to understand how that condition actually takes hold, we have to start with Starr's core metaphor, right? The moldy blueberry.
Exactly.
So think about a carton of fruit you buy at the grocery store. A single spoiled berry in that little plastic clamshell isn't a disaster on its own.
No.
Living systems, like a carton of fruit or a corporate office, they are naturally imperfect. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have difficult people.
Right. The imperfection isn't the actual threat. The single bad berry is just it's a localized failure.
Mm-hmm.
The true threat is the container itself and how the environment responds to that failure.
Because if that moldy blueberry is just left in the container, it changes the ambient condition of all the fruit around it. The surrounding berries don't sit there and actively choose to decay. They are just trapped in an environment where the source of the decay is permitted to stay. It reminds me of passive smoke.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Like, you don't have to be the one smoking the cigarette to get sick. You just have to be locked in a room where someone else is allowed to chain smoke without any open windows.
That passive smoke analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. Because members of an organization aren't physically porous like a piece of fruit, right?
Right.
But they are psychologically and structurally exposed. You are constantly absorbing permission structures.
Reading the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are reading what leadership rewards, what they ignore, and what they punish. And what's fascinating here is that institutional rot almost always begins as a concentrated disturbance.
Like one specific area.
Right. A specific person, a specific faction, maybe just a specific department.
Let's ground this a bit. Let's invent a hypothetical executive. We'll call him Alex, the VP of sales.
Hey, Alex.
So Alex hits his revenue targets, but he screams at his subordinates, he steals credit for ideas, and he deliberately pits teams against each other.
A classic toxic profile.
Yeah, a real peach.
Uh-huh.
At what point does the Alex problem cross the line from a localized headache into systemic rot?
So Starr defines that crossing point as the contamination threshold.
Okay.
And the threshold is crossed not when Alex simply exists in the building. It is crossed when the surrounding system adapts to Alex's dysfunction.
Wow. Adapts to it.
Yes, it's the moment the organization stops treating his toxic behavior as a problem to be solved and starts treating it as a fact of nature to be accommodated.
But wait, I have to challenge the premise a bit here.
Sure.
Because in the modern corporate world, we have HR departments, we have, 360-degree performance reviews, anonymous feedback channels.
We do.
I struggle to see how a genuinely toxic presence like our hypothetical Alex manages to survive long enough to force an entire corporate structure to bend around him. Like, why doesn't the system just fire him?
Because dysfunction only gains structural leverage when it is protected by authority.
Protected by authority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If Alex is an entry-level employee with no power, he's just a disruption. The system's immune response works, and he is eventually ejected.
Right.
But if Alex controls the budget, or if he's best friends with the CEO, or if he holds the keys to the most lucrative client accounts, his dysfunction becomes shielded.
Oh, I see.
The hierarchy itself, the very structure designed to maintain order, becomes the mechanism that locks the doors to your smoke-filled room.
And when the hierarchy steps in to protect the toxic element, things get really bizarre really quickly.
They do.
Starr highlights something called accountability inversion, which, I think is one of the most recognizable symptoms of a rotting culture.
It's entirely recognizable. Accountability inversion happens when the institution becomes incredibly eager to discipline those with the least power,
Yeah.
while becoming intensely hesitant to correct those with the most influence.
It's the classic scenario where a junior marketing coordinator gets a formal written warning from HR because their expense report was submitted 24 hours late.
Yes.
But Alex, the VP, can publicly humiliate a director in a town hall meeting, cost the company a major client through sheer arrogance, and absolutely nothing happens.
Nothing at all.
The system basically flexes its muscles on the weak to prove it still has rules, while giving the powerful a total free pass.
And the psychology behind that is fascinating, too. Because correcting the junior coordinator is easy, right?
Yeah.
It requires no political capital.
Right.
Confronting Alex requires a massive power struggle, so the institution takes the path of least resistance. But to avoid looking hypocritical, the institution has to deploy what Starr calls moral camouflage.
Right. The spin zone.
Exactly. They have to justify why Alex is still there. So the toxic behavior is reframed.
Right.
He isn't abusive. He's passionate. He isn't a bully. He's results-driven, or he's indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
The institution fatally confuses utility with health.
Wow. Utility with health.
Yeah. A leader might be highly useful in the short term, like they might hit those quarterly targets, but their presence is still fundamentally toxic to the long-term survival of the organism.
And the terrifying part is that the rest of the staff sees right through that camouflage.
Always.
The protection of this behavior is rarely announced in a memo. It's communicated through inaction.
Yes.
It's the stalled internal inquiry, the evasive language from the CEO, or, worst of all, the quiet retaliation against the person who finally spoke up and named the problem.
That's the real nail in the coffin.
Because once you, as an employee, see someone get punished for telling the truth, you understand the actual rules of the game.
The written values of the company immediately become void, and they're replaced by the lived reality of the power dynamics.
So here's where it gets really interesting.
Let's hear.
Once that dynamic is locked in, the dysfunction doesn't just stay isolated around Alex. Starr maps this contamination across 4 specific domains of the organization's psychological architecture. So that's mind, emotion, identity, and meaning. Let's look at how the actual mind of a company degrades.
So when Starr talks about the institutional mind, he is referring to the system's capacity to perceive reality.
Okay.
A healthy organization has clear cognitive pathways. Unwelcome news can travel upward without friction. But under contamination, the capacity to perceive reality narrows drastically. The institution begins to think defensively.
Meaning, nobody wants to be the one to tell Alex his strategy is failing.
Exactly.
So the data gets softened. The analytics team cherry-picks the metrics to make a disastrous launch look like a modest success.
Yep.
The conclusions are basically fixed before the inquiry even begins.
The organization effectively trains itself not to receive the very knowledge it needs to survive. The facts that threaten the power structure simply become unwelcome.
Which means the organization is essentially hallucinating.
Yes.
It's perceiving a reality that doesn't exist. And if the mind of the company is hallucinating to protect the people in power, The emotional state of the people working there must be incredibly volatile.
It creates a climate of chronic hypervigilance. The institutional emotion shifts from a healthy processing of conflict to learned helplessness.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It is. Neurologically speaking, when you work under an unpredictable or punitive leader, your brain's amygdala is constantly firing. You are stuck in a threat detection state.
You're anticipating the punishment before it even happens.
Yes. A volatile leader teaches the staff anticipation. A punitive leader teaches concealment.
Wow.
Employees stop reacting to the actual work and start reacting to the emotional pattern they expect the institution to repeat. They hide their mistakes, they hoard information, and the air in the office just feels perpetually heavy with suspicion.
So if the mind is defensive and the emotion is perpetually anxious, who do you become in that environment? Like, what happens to your sense of self when you log in every day?
That brings us to identity and what Starr calls the adversarial social posture.
Okay.
In a healthy system, your professional identity is rooted in your competence. You're a good engineer, a creative designer, a diligent accountant. You share a purpose.
Right.
But in a contaminated system, those professional identities are stripped away, and you are forced into distorted survival roles based entirely on your proximity to the dysfunction.
So you stop being an engineer and you become a loyalist.
Yes.
You become the person who aggressively defends Alex to protect your own status. Or you become a survivor, just keeping your head down, doing exactly what you're told, and trying to become invisible.
You might also become a carrier, someone who internalizes the toxic behavior and starts treating their own direct reports the way Alex treats his.
Oh, passing down.
Exactly. Or you become the scapegoat, the person blamed for the systemic failures. The tragedy is that everyone is adopting a posture that serves the dysfunction rather than the work.
Which naturally decimates the fourth domain, meaning
Yes.
Starr describes the meaning hierarchy system under strain. And I think we all know what happens to the mission statement when the culture goes bad.
It becomes a punchline.
Right.
When a system is under the strain of authority-protected rot, its meaning hierarchy moves from holding to bending to eventually breaking.
Mm-hmm.
The organization's actual purpose, whether that's building great software or treating patients, it contracts. The sole focus becomes internal preservation and avoiding consequence.
But the leadership still points to the posters on the wall, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
They still send out the company-wide emails about integrity and excellence.
The original mission language is fiercely preserved, but it serves an entirely different function now. It becomes merely decorative.
Just decorative.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's used as a shield. And when you force employees to live every single day in the massive gap between the noble, stated meaning of the company and the brutal, lived reality, it induces profound moral exhaustion.
I can completely see that. Let's look at this from the perspective of the average employee, though, because when we talk about this widespread rot, it almost sounds like everyone is in on it. But do people really wake up, pour their coffee, commute to the office, and actively decide to participate in systemic decay?
No, and that is a vital misconception to clear up. This doesn't require a deliberate conspiracy of bad actors.
Okay.
The transmission of this rot happens through completely ordinary, rational adaptation to distorted conditions. People simply read the room, they assess power, risk, and reward, and they adjust their behavior to survive.
And Starr outlines 5 mechanisms for how this transmission happens, right? And they sort of cascade into each other. It starts with simple imitation, doesn't it?
Yes, imitation is the most visible mechanism. A mid-level manager sees that Alex, the VP, gets promoted by hoarding information and shifting blame.
Right.
The manager rationally concludes that this is the actual criteria for advancement. They aren't imitating Alex out of admiration. They are imitating him out of perceived necessity.
And that imitation breeds the second mechanism, silence.
Yes.
Starr calls silence the strongest carrier of the rot, which seems counterintuitive. How is doing nothing stronger than doing something toxic?
Because silence provides the illusion of health. It allows the dysfunction to remain formally invisible while being informally known by everyone. And again, silence is a rational adaptation. If you flag a severe problem 3 times and nothing changes, or worse, you are labeled not a team player for bringing it up. You will naturally stop reporting problems.
You go numb to it.
You do. But the fatal flaw is that top leadership then misreads that silence. They look at the lack of complaints and assume it signifies consent and stability.
No one is sounding the alarm, so the ship must not be sinking.
Exactly.
But in reality, everyone is just silently bailing water. And in that environment of silence, the third mechanism takes root: emotional contagion.
Yes.
This is where the baseline of the entire office shifts to distrust. Like, if I send you a perfectly neutral email asking for an update on a project in a healthy office, you just send the update.
Right. It's just a question.
But in a rotting office, you spend 20 minutes analyzing why I'm asking, who I CC'd, and whether I'm trying to throw you under the bus.
Exactly. The accumulated distrust colors every interaction. And that emotional exhaustion drives the fourth mechanism, which is role capture.
Oh, this one.
This is incredibly common. Role capture happens when an employee starts performing their job primarily to serve the contaminating structure rather than their actual mission.
I see this constantly with middle managers.
All the time.
You get a manager who's supposed to be leading a creative team, but their entire job slowly morphs into acting as a human blast shield.
Yes.
They spend 80% of their time managing Alex's moods, intercepting his angry emails, and trying to translate his chaotic directives into something actionable for their team. Their title is still creative director, but their actual role has been captured by the rot. They are just a buffer.
And they often believe they are doing a noble thing by protecting their team.
Because they're taking the hits.
Right. But structurally, they are enabling the rot. They are insulating the toxic leader from the natural consequences of their behavior, which allows the decay to continue.
Which leaves the employees with only one defense mechanism left, the fifth one, meaning substitution and adaptive cynicism.
Yes.
The original mission is dead, so the culture unites around a shared sense of grievance.
Cynicism gets a bad reputation in the corporate world.
It does.
But in a contaminated system, cynicism is not a character flaw. It is a highly rational suit of armor.
Okay, how so?
Well, if your company tells you they value work-life balance while explicitly rewarding those who work 80-hour weeks, cynicism is the only psychological defense you have against the constant contradiction.
Oh, totally.
If you actually believed the company's messaging, the cognitive dissonance would break you.
Okay, I need to put the brakes on for a second and play devil's advocate.
Please do.
We've just painted a very grim, very relatable picture. But it is incredibly tempting to listen to all of this and immediately diagnose every annoying boss, every bad Monday, or every failed product launch as institutional rot.
Very tempting.
So if I'm listening to this right now, how do I know when my company is actually rotting versus just going through a rough patch?
Starr is very deliberate in establishing diagnostic boundaries to prevent exactly that kind of overreaction. We have to differentiate discomfort from decay.
Okay.
The first boundary is imperfection versus contamination. As we established with the blueberry, failure is a normal part of business. A healthy institution fails, examines the failure honestly, learns from it, and adjusts.
Right.
Contamination is defined by the loss of that corrective capacity. It's when failure happens and the system is forced to pretend it was a success to protect someone's ego.
So it's the difference between we messed up and we aren't allowed to admit we messed up.
Precisely. The second boundary is conflict versus decay. Healthy environments have conflict. People argue over resources, they debate strategy, they offer dissenting opinions.
That's normal.
It is. In a decaying system, however, dissent is not treated as a difference of opinion. It is treated as a breach of loyalty. And correcting a superior is treated as an act of insubordination rather than an effort to improve the work.
What about the financial side? Because I have seen highly toxic teams, like complete shark tanks that are absolutely crushing their sales quotas.
Oh, sure.
Does making money mean the organization is healthy?
This is the most dangerous solution. The third boundary is short-term performance versus health. A contaminated system can absolutely hit short-term targets.
Right.
Fear is a highly effective motivator for a quarter or two, but underneath that visible productivity, the architecture, the trust, the psychological safety, the capacity for innovation is collapsing.
So they're burning the furniture to keep the house warm.
Exactly. Eventually, the fuel runs out.
Starr also draws a very specific line between contamination and what he calls the organizational escalation loop. I think people confuse these two all the time because they both feel like high conflict environments.
They do feel similar, but mechanically they are distinct. An escalation loop is a compounding conflict. It's usually a misprocessed discrepancy, say, marketing and sales disagree on a strategy, and that disagreement hardens into defensive, warring silos.
Okay.
But contamination is about a protected condition spreading. Escalation is a localized fire getting hotter. Contamination is a toxic gas, fundamentally reorganizing the air quality of the entire building.
That makes total sense. So we've diagnosed the rot. We understand how it rewires the mind, the emotion, the identity, and the meaning of a workplace. Which brings us to the ultimate million-dollar question.
How do you fix it?
How do you fix it? And I have to say, Starr's conclusion is pretty stark. When an institution is truly rotting, surface-level reforms are entirely useless.
Surface reforms are the equivalent of putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a crumbling foundation.
Right.
You cannot fix systemic rot by writing a new set of corporate values, launching a rebranding campaign, or hosting, a mandatory seminar on mindfulness.
Oh, the mindfulness seminars.
Right. Those efforts fail because the decay is already embedded in the decision-making architecture itself.
So what is the true fix?
The repair requires absolute reconstitution across all 4 domains. It requires restoring the capacity for honest inquiry, regulating the emotional climate, rebuilding professional identities, and aligning the actual work with the stated meaning.
Wow.
And crucially, it starts with the moldy blueberry. The toxic source must be removed.
It has to go.
But Starr emphasizes that firing the bad actor is not the end of the repair. It is merely the act of containment.
It's stopping the leak, but you still have to pump the water out of the basement.
Exactly.
Which is a massive, exhausting undertaking. And it leaves me with one final thought for you to mull over as you evaluate your own teams and organizations. Think about this. R.J. Starr points out that an institution's identity architecture, the survival habits we talked about, changes far slower than its formal org chart.
So true.
So let's say your organization finally wakes up and fires that moldy blueberry tomorrow. They escort Alex out of the building. Right. How much of the psychological rot, the deep-seated habit of remaining silent, the defensive data reporting, the reflexive cynicism, is still secretly governing the decisions you and your colleagues will make the day after?
Because the container remembers the mold long after the berry is gone.
Yes.
The true test of an organization isn't just whether it can fire the bad actor, but whether it can unlearn the survival tactics it developed to endure them.
That is the real work. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you. Look closely at what your environment is asking you to adapt to, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been The Psychology of Us. The work presented here is part of a public psychological archive by R.J. Starr. It is educational and interpretive, not clinical or advisory. Episodes are published as finished reflections and are intended to be encountered as complete works.